Hello, everyone. Welcome to Changed by Love. Shawn, my son Shawn, my oldest son, is with me today, and he is going to be talking about breaking the mold and finding your design. We got this because he wrote a bio, and it was amazing, and I said, can you please read that? It's kind of a bit of a testimony, but it's what he's learned through lots of different experiences that we've had as a family and how it affected him personally as an individual, as a child growing up through those experiences. They were just not common at all. And it has shaped him into the person that he is today. Mm-hmm. And the way he wrote it, I just thought, this is something that I would like for my people to hear. And so I will just turn you loose and let you go ahead and talk about that.
Okay, so basically I wrote this bio. Hi, Reagan. I wrote this bio because I've started my own Facebook page that's based off of what I do as a writer and as an author. And basically I have a book that I'm writing that I'm working on pretty intensely now. Some of you might know about.
And there's lots of encouragement.
Yeah, there's
saying, come on.
A lot of people saying you got to write this book. So I'm working on it. I'm just putting in the work, putting in the time, getting it done. It's just a lot of the things that I've gotten from just the various experiences I've had in life. Good to see you too. And just the things that I've learned from this whole journey, and then just because, all of us, we have a passion. There's something in us that burns. There's something that was put there that we were really designed to do, something that we're going to take off with. And when we really connect to that, when we really find that inner burning, when we find that flywheel that just keeps us in a positive feedback loop, keeps us where we just keep on building and building and building, we discover and we innovate and we get a hold of things that other people might not have seen just because we're dedicated. I am. I'm working on it. And so that for me was my passion, my obsession was understanding how people work, understanding the motives, understanding the nature. It's both in a sense of how other people work, but also how do I work? Mm-hmm. So the intrapersonal and the interpersonal. It's always really just been a consuming curiosity for me, and I've wanted to know, why do people do what they do? Why do I do what I do? Really understanding motives, understanding purposes and intent, and understanding how do you master yourself? How do you have self-mastery? It always made sense from a biblical perspective. It said that the greatest conqueror isn't the one who conquers a city, but the one that can conquer his own soul. Mm-hmm. And that's something that has been a constant theme that I've seen in life. Is at the end of the day, we focus on so many external things. We focus on all this other stuff we got to do and responsibilities to other people and the things that we try to accomplish all the time, and we miss that the bigger perspective is you can gain the whole world but lose your soul.
Yeah.
And
that doesn't really handle other things properly until we handle ourselves properly.
Exactly. There's always a limiting factor. There's always what I like to call a cap on our potential. And that cap is your relationship to yourself, how good you are at dealing with yourself, how good you are at understanding your own mind, your own heart, your own spirit, what is guiding you, what's propelling you, what might be holding you back. Thank you. Yes.
Understanding and appreciating and loving yourself. Yes. Because God made you the way he did. Mm-hmm. And that's good enough reason. And that's why who's going to argue with their creator? That's just dumb. And so the way he made you is good.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's an intentionality to it. There's a necessity that, if you really want to reach your highest potential, if you really want to live the best kind of life that you can possibly live, if you want, to have the most out of life, the only way to really be able to do that is to be able to deal with yourself in the best way possible. And get over insecurities and get over fears and get over areas that we hide from ourselves and we're self-sabotaging, those are the things that we have to really address and grow so that we can get to the point that we're not self-sabotaging anymore. We're not holding ourselves down in a certain place.
Like you say that my biggest enemy is myself, and you don't want
Absolutely.
that to be that way.
Absolutely.
Stop that.
That's the reality. And, you know, these were some of the things that I came to realize, because I went through a lot of things that were very hard, were very traumatic, they were very difficult, and in a lot of cases, I felt like there was a lot of betrayal. Like I got betrayed by a lot of people, got hurt very deeply. They were outside of
your control because you were a child, and
yeah,
our decisions are
and into adulthood too. And you know, just these experiences, they just left me like, what am I supposed to do with this? You know, like this didn't work, that didn't work. This person turned on me, that person turned on me. Nothing has ever been consistent. Nothing ever goes the way I am hoping and expecting it to.
Nothing is permanent. Nothing lasts.
Yeah. And there's always just this deep desire. I want to have relationships that last. I want to have things in my life that last and are consistent. And I wasn't getting it. So it was making me very troubled in life and, depressed and having a hard time dealing with all this. And I'm not a depressive kind of person. I'm not a melancholy sort of person. I don't have tendencies towards, swinging bipolar, towards depression or going up on these highs. I'm a pretty, level, easygoing kind of person. But
it took you a long time to get to that place of feeling that way, but it was just piled on top of each other year after year.
Yeah, it really was. And the issue was the piling on, that I didn't know how to really process it, how to really deal with it. And, so as I came to some points of self-realization of, I have to learn how to handle some of this stuff that I'm not dealing with, that I'm not comfortable with, because if I don't, this is only going to get worse, and I'm only going to really lose myself completely and the person that I'm supposed to be, that I know I want to be. So I have to figure out how this stuff works, like it or not. I took the time. And so what this book that I'm writing is the culmination of really 10 years of experience and struggling and trying to really understand myself, understand how basically, the overarching question is, how do you become content in whatever state you're in? How do you take all circumstances, no matter what they are, that are coming at you, and learn to use it to your benefit? Learn to use it to actually become better and more, and just to be able to enjoy life even when things aren't going the way you want them to, but to be able to find the way also in the circumstances and the things that are happening, to play the cards that life deals you in the best way possible. And so the mindsets, the meta skills required, being able to get to a certain strategic kind of mindset and the ability to handle things, and the self-mastery, all of that comes in together, that you have to learn, you have to pick it up. Some of these things are innate talents. We might have more of a tendency to be able to do them. A lot of the others are actually skills that we have to learn. Like here's a big one. Gratitude is a skill. It's something that you learn. It's a skill set you develop. Gratitude is very closely related to creativity. And it's not something that you were just born creative. Nobody's born with the gratitude, and nobody's born with this intense creativity to be able to come into any situation and have solutions. You build that, you develop it. We all have the potential. We all have a potential to be grateful. We all have a potential to be highly creative, but we have to develop that. We have to put in the intentional time. Yeah, and
add to it and keep working, building on what you already have inside of you, and just nurture it.
Absolutely. It is a matter of the choices that you make to nurture it. So basically, this bio that I wrote is something that I put together for the purpose of, just kind of explaining what that page is about and why I'm writing this book, what that book is really about. And so I have it put together. Just a second. I'm going to make sure I'm tagged here on my page so I can actually make sure that it's shared across the spectrum, so anybody who wants to join in from my page can get on too. But this entire bio that I wrote, it is specifically for that purpose of just, kind of outlining what this journey has been that's gotten me to this point to be able to write this book, and to kind of define a little bit of my platform as a writer, what I'm doing as a writer, why I've made these choices and I've gone in this sort of direction. And, you know, a lot of it does have to do with the,
That's us
there we
talking
are.
right now.
Whoa, Inception. But, yeah, a lot of it does have to do with where I have been blessed to have the home that I have had, the family that I have had, the conditions I've been, you know, brought into in life. It's helped me a lot to understand these things and to come to these realizations. And in some ways, you know, it's given me some advantages that others wouldn't have. They wouldn't have had the time to really think on these things as deeply as I have. They wouldn't have had the ability that I've been trained to have this skill. I've been trained to have the ability to think for myself, to develop my own thinking, to pour into my own research, to figure out the things that I need to figure out. It's definitely been my, you know, my personal upbringing and being a homeschooler and having the freedom to explore who I really am. That has been a major part of why I've been able to do this, why I've been able to do what I've been able to do. And though I do also fully believe, hi Michelle, I do also fully believe that no matter what circumstances you've been put in, you can still come to the realizations and come to some of these things that I have come to. Awesome. Glad to have you here. Hey, you know, cleaning and listening works. I fully support that kind of multitasking.
Yeah.
Those are the things that you can use those two different parts of your brain at once and not have a problem.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So basically, yeah, so this whole bio that I wrote is to kind of explain that, a bit of that journey, and explain what it is that I'm going. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and read it. A little bit lengthy, so bear with me, but I think it's worth hearing, worth, you know, listening to. So the biography is here on my page, which we'll probably share a link or something up here that you guys can see it if you want to follow my Facebook page for my book and my writing. But so here's the biography. I started on the path of being a content creator when I was 5 years old, sitting at our family's Power Macintosh 6100. I had access to movie scripting and writing applications and DAW software that got me interested in writing and sound creation from that early stage of life. I had begun making skits and fun shows with my grandpa when he would visit, and I was creating my own sound effects. By age 8, I was already proficient with graphic design and Adobe Photoshop, and then also combining that with animated landscape design in Bryce when I was 10. Having grown up on the Think Different platform, built by innovators and creatives, I had access to powerful tools that afforded me to create almost anything I could imagine. There was always music and a guitar or keyboard or piano sitting by accessible for me to just pick it up and start hammering out the notes and making my own little tunes, or getting those parts of the songs that were stuck in my head, getting them out, playing them out. Another strong influence was my childhood best friend. We knew each other because our parents attended the same church, Ascension Life Center. We pretty much became friends at 2 years old and were inseparable from that point onward. We'd play an imagination game that we called Fight, in which we would combine all of our favorite movies, video games, TV shows, and books into a role-playing story we would act out together. We would include our favorite characters from these sources in the game as allies and villains, and we would recombine the traits of characters in the universes they came from to write our own world into existence and become our own sort of hero. Our favorite part was probably fighting the bad guys, hence why we called it Fight. But we did so much universe building and character development in this game. It evolved and changed as we grew older. All of this was thanks to my dad, who was always a creative type and ahead of his time, and my mom, who made the choice to take charge of my education at home. They both set the stage for me early on to discover my own voice creatively. Because of the freedom and encouragement they gave me, along with the resources and opportunities they made sure surrounded me, I grew up knowing that I was encoded for creativity. I realized very early on that I naturally see the world from an artistic framework. I carried all of this into adulthood, where I promptly lost touch with it. I was unhappily engaged in the struggle for survival, fortune, and validation that is the lure of the job economy. But after my fair share of seeing businesses fail, dealing with abusive work environments, and being disappointed constantly by the extreme fragility of opportunities offered to employees, I realized I had to make a change or I would never be happy. I went back to the drawing board for a whole year, taking a sabbatical to rethink everything. I got back in touch with myself after being in the most toxic work environment and horrendous emotional state of my life. I realized that I had gotten suckered into a game I was never designed to play. I saw that my anger, bitterness, and disappointment came from trying to force myself into a mold I would never fit. It was actually very logical of my non-conscious self to completely rebel against that self-imposed artificial lifestyle. But it took time for me to see that and to begin to embrace my nature as a source of strength instead of a hindrance to life. As I studied the problem from many different angles, I started to develop a whole new philosophy of life in the process. Building on all of my previous knowledge and experiences, I added to that the drive to find a better way to live. I combined what I was learning from podcasts, video courses, books, conversations with people who were living the kind of life I wanted to have, and personal experimentation. All of this was informed by what I had learned and practiced for sheer love before jobs, as well as the mostly negative data I got from pretty much everything involving in pursuing them. I emerged with strengthened conviction of three things. One, the existing systems of society are not really designed with people in mind, but are fundamentally engineered to be self-sustaining and to enrich those who control them. Two, we have been programmed by these systems to sacrifice our time, happiness, and self-determination for a false sense of security and the validation trap of social status. Three, we still have the potential to define our own values and priorities and to tweak them for the best possible life for ourselves and those around us, because we can break out of the programming and find independent ways of harnessing socioeconomic systems without being controlled by them. And so I set out to write my first book, codenamed HTVAIS, to equip others to find their own way out of the labyrinth. It all starts with the foundation of mastering one of the most powerful tools in the world, perspective. A platform has been created around a book that is dedicated to perspective. In it, I will strive to teach the most essential lessons I learned in my journey of developing this superpower. You will find concepts, tools, exercises, life examples, and analogies that I have personally used in my quest for happiness, freedom, and a meaningful life. This is a holistic book, and it will be all about what I consider the essential aspects of life: self-knowledge, creating a meaningful and effective personal value system, handling relationships constructively, attending to your mental and emotional health, life hacks for making things easier, getting unstuck from ineffective mindsets, and crafting an evolving vision of yourself and life. I really appreciate you becoming a part of this journey with me by reading this bio. I hope you are inspired to take fresh steps of your own toward greater fulfillment and self-actualization. And if you're thirsty for more, know that I'll be posting on this subject for the foreseeable future across my social media accounts. And I will have my first book and many others out and available for you to dig into the exciting world of self-discovery along with me. Thank you.
So that is, I thought you had gone into more of the hard experiences that we went through along the way. I didn't remember it exactly as it was, but I guess that's been on my mind because of the post I wrote about how to homeschool in the midst of the hard things.
But that is a big part of everything that I learned. Oh, thank you. Well, I will we'll put up, probably we'll either edit it in this live when it becomes a post.
Something in there right
could you
now.
Put in? Could you put in the @ and put in my Shawn Douglas? It should come up probably as a page. You do follow me, right?
Well, your personal page?
No, the not my personal page. We want to put in
communication.
No.
Shawn Mendes.
Yeah, that's not me either. Writer? No, I don't know. Well, we'll get it put up here to where you can actually follow me. But also if you click on my profile page, I'll share my writer page again on there, and then you can see it if you click to my profile.
You're Shawn.
So you can see I'm tagged right there.
Yeah, he's tagged in here. Oh,
yeah.
You can't see my arrow, but he's tagged in there.
Yeah, I'm tagged up in there. Thank you. I appreciate the applause. But yes, definitely, and like you were back to what you were saying, the difficult things we went through, that's really one of the biggest things that I'm teaching in my book, that I'm wanting to really convey and share this concept, this principle. The fact is, trauma and traumatic events, if we look at it from kind of a storytelling perspective, those are the origin points. Those are the origin stories of heroes and villains. Mm-hmm. And the question is, how do you process it? How do you take that traumatic event? What do you choose to be your narrative from that point? Yeah. That then defines who you are. Because all those traumatic events that are very volatile, that shake you up, that push you through a lot, both good and bad, are the events that really drive you further and faster into whatever direction you're choosing.
It can pull the greatness out of you.
They're amplifiers, they're amplifying experiences.
Make you stronger.
So the kind of person that you are choosing to be through those things that happen, they're just going to drive you further into those choices. They're just putting more impetus and more power behind your choices. They're making it harder in some cases to choose the higher path. A lot of times, a lot of times it's making it where you're having to deal with more difficulty and more, is this really what I want? Am I really going to put others before myself? Am I really going to think of something bigger than just surviving?
You're choosing to take the narrow way, walk on the narrow path.
And it puts you to some decisions. And again, and the balancing things too of, okay, so in the big picture, yes, we put others before ourselves. In the big picture, we want to have impact. We want to think of what's generational and what's going to actually proceed after ourselves. The only legacy is the lives of the people that we've changed. Mm-hmm. But the other half of the coin is you are your own legacy, because after this life and what comes afterwards, you're going to be stuck with yourself. It's going to be you and God.
Stand before the throne.
What you're going to be presenting to God is you. You're going to be presenting yourself to God. So it's vitally important too that aside from living for this bigger picture of everyone else, that you also understand the importance of becoming the best person that you possibly can be, what God created you to be.
That's the being and doing thing.
Yeah.
Who you are is really the most important thing, and that's what you.
Everything else proceeds
about
from
in your
that.
Book, yeah.
It all comes down to values, and that's a lot of what I'm really going to show through my book. But I'll tell you that for me personally, and like my testimony and proof of why this stuff works is because through that I've become grateful for everything that's ever happened in my life. I'm not lying. I am not self-deluded. I am literally grateful for every single hard thing I ever went through.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for every betrayal. I'm grateful for every time
a lot of loss.
Yeah, a lot of loss, a whole lot of loss. All of these things, the instability and the things that I went through that at the time just seemed like it was horrible. And I was wondering why, why would you do this, God? What did I do to deserve this? Whatever questions you can possibly ask that, there's no answer to, you're not getting any good answer from, but it just for some reason feels better to say it. It's at the end of the day, it was all worth it to come to be the person I am today, to make the realizations, to come to the points of understanding, to see this whole different way of viewing life. And one of the biggest terms, one of the biggest words that really helped me understand all of this and put it into a different perspective was bittersweet. to understand that life is bittersweet. And to be a true connoisseur of life, you can't just be addicted to the sweetness and addicted to the sugariness. You need the depth and the richness of the whole human experience, including the sorrow. You know, there is a kind of compassion and mercy you can't have until you've been there, until you've been deeply impacted by those same things that are hurting others, that are making others, you know, feel so much suffering and so much pain. And there are self-realizations that you don't come to unless you are forced to face your fears and face the things that are most terrifying, which more often than not is more of yourself, that you're afraid of who you are. You're afraid of who you might become. You're afraid of dealing with the things inside of yourself. You know, that's one of the biggest things that I learned, that, you know, I differ from a lot of Christian teachers and what a lot of other people think. I don't agree that the fear of death is the strongest fear. For one thing, there is scientific proof. There's a lot of evidence that people are more afraid of being publicly humiliated than they are of dying. So death is not the primary fear. No, the primary fear is of being afraid. We are more afraid of facing our fear. We are more afraid of fear itself than we are of anything else surrounding it. It's more terrifying to go straight into the throat of your fear and go face to face with it and take it on than it is to deal with somebody else's fear, than it is to deal with something external.
Fear itself.
Yeah, which was a very profound statement, you know, and it's it's funny because the truth to it, you know, what that statement really is that the only thing that can really destroy us, the only thing that can really cause us true harm is our fear.
Yeah.
So it's not, you know, it's not the external things that fear latches onto. It is the fear itself. And it is this thing that battles and is like a parasite. It's like those vines that try to grow on trees, and it needs you to believe in it. It needs you to hold on to it. It needs you to continue to give it a place and let it drive your rationale and drive your logic and your modus operandi so that it can continue to exist. So that's fear is rooted in itself and requires you to survive.
That's the real enemy.
That's the real enemy.
And your book helps us to learn how to deal with fear.
Absolutely.
The worst fears.
Fears, insecurities, the things that hold us back, and primarily what fear really functions in, which is it functions in lies. It functions in deception.
Yes.
It functions in controlling the narrative so that you think there's only one answer. There's only, you know, this is it. You know, I don't have a choice. It eliminates your perspective that you have choices. And
yeah, you've got that veil over your understanding, and you can't see beyond fear.
Exactly. You know, fear dominates the conversation and pretends to be the voice of reason. And that's how it gets us locked into, well, you know, I have to do this. You know, I have no choice. You know, you do have a choice. You know, there's always a choice. Yeah. And whenever you make a choice, that's a part of living in gratitude, is being able to fully commit to that and be thankful and say, you know what, I made this choice. So even if there are some consequences and some things I have to deal with, and even if things, you know, outcomes don't all happen the way I would have hoped it would, still, I got to make this choice. And I'm celebrating that fact, and I'm going through with it, even if it means that there is more, you know, surprise work than I realized there would be at the end of it. Or even if I have to pivot and realize that choice wasn't entirely right.
And then we always have God working all things together for our good.
Yeah.
So even if we mess up, even if we make the wrong choice, we've got someone who is for us, not against us, and he helps make those things work together, even if we just got a little crazy there for a while, or we thought we were hearing God and we weren't really, or whatever. Yeah. We're not just like stuck with the consequences and we've ruined our lives.
Yeah. Well, that's the perspective of fear, is that everything is terminal. Everything is critical. Everything is high stakes. You know, if you fail, that's it. That's failure.
And
you know, it's all over. It has
to be done right now.
It makes everything
urgency
so much bigger in this moment and what's going to happen afterwards than in what it really is, and doesn't take into perspective that you know, we really should have a bit more of a laboratory kind of view of life, that we're experimenting, we're trying things out, we're observing and seeing how things happen, how things work in our lives.
Constantly
learning and growing, and that's really what we should be doing. You know, life is not a written test that if you take it wrong, you get an F, and that's the grade that's on you, and now you're a failure.
Right.
You know, it doesn't work that way. Failure is a construct. It's something that we've created and we've come to accept. It's not a real thing.
No, trying and not succeeding is just a step in the process of getting to the place where you want to be.
Yeah. You know, it's saying, you know, same old story of Edison trying 999 other ways of making a light bulb before he finally comes to the right one, the 1000th one. He didn't look at it as 999 failures. He looked at it as 999 ways to not make a light bulb. So, you know, that's the difference. It's in perspective. And why a lot of people give up is because they have the wrong perspective. You know, we are in a battle with our linear perspective and how we deal with time. And we have these certain levels of tolerance, these certain caps that we set ourselves at, that we say, well, you know, and maybe they're defined for us, or maybe it's just based on our feelings and based when we feel like our willpower has been too sapped. But we hit a point that, well, it's been too long. You know, God didn't show up, or this didn't happen.
Failure.
That didn't happen. So that's it.
It's done.
It's failure.
It's over.
And that's just because we decided to see it that way. We decided to look at it that way.
Yeah.
It didn't have to be that way. We chose to see it that way. You know, and that's not to say that there's never a point where a project is just something that you should realize, okay, this isn't really going to go in a good direction. I'm just pounding my head against the wall. So you need to pivot. You need to take the experience you got from that and go in a slightly different direction. I mean, those situations definitely exist. But in so many ways, we just tend to cast aside everything, throw the baby out with the bathwater, and just decide to nuke everything. Well, it's all over. I failed, and give up altogether. When it's like the story of the man who was digging and digging and digging, trying his best to find gold, and he gave up, and he got sick of it. And this is a real story, actually. And so he just said, all right, I can't get anything out of this. So he sells the mine to another guy, and the other guy brings in some inspectors, brings in some experts, and they find that 5 feet further, if he just dug 5 feet further, he would have found one of the richest gold veins in California. And the only difference was he gave up too soon. That was it. So is that always the case? No, not necessarily. But it's a very important lesson in perspective. It's a very important lesson in how we allow these emotional boundaries that we set up. We let ourselves, and we try to say that it's logical. We try to say, well, it's just been too long, you know, or
it's been too long.
But it's not really based on real
facts.
Arbitrary,
and that's artificial to say it's been too long.
Yeah. And so
we don't know that.
A big part of, you know, managing these kinds of things and making better choices is being able to be honest with ourselves and see where we made a decision that was actually arbitrary, that was actually emotional, and learn to do better, learn to be more in control of our emotions, learn to actually harness them in a positive way, to choose how we feel about things and how we think about things.
Yes.
And so that requires intentionality, that requires some getting outside of the box, getting outside of our own heads, thinking a little differently. So that's what my book is primarily going to be about. But it's important that I want everyone to realize, I want everyone to know that no matter what your circumstances are, there is always an advantage to be found in it. There is always something that you can take and you can build. The worst things that have happened in your life are building material. They're building material for constructing the life that is the best and most amazing thing that you could ever possibly have, better than what you could have imagined before you went through those things.
And realizing that you can have hope, and you don't have to have anxiety and depression and expect something terrible to happen, because you just know that the more you just keep on going on and keep on doing it, tomorrow's going to be a better day. Just always keep that attitude. That's the perspective. Tomorrow's going to be a better day. I'm not going to fail.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the reality, is that when you understand that failure is just, it's only a thing if you choose to see it as a thing.
Yeah.
And it really means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that you really can't be a failure as long as you are continuing to be who you're meant to be, and you keep on trying and making choices and learning. Every day you learn and you become better. You take the things that happened to you yesterday and you choose to improve and you choose to become more through that. Then there is no failure.
Behind. Leave the past behind. It's gone. It's done.
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely, when it comes to holding yourself responsible, when it comes to guilt, when it comes to feeling like, you know, this is how it's always going to be. We get this recency bias and we think that life is just going to keep on repeating. No, you have to let those things go. Those are issues of perspective. You know, you need to look at your past creatively. That's what gratitude allows you to do. It allows to take your past and your present and look at it creatively and start to think from a lens of how can I actually appropriate resources? How can I actually take principles and lessons and things that I can actually turn into profit and turn into benefit for not just myself, but for everyone else? And that's the perspective we really want to have. That's what we really want to cultivate.
Yeah. Well, that was great. Thank you, Shawn, for sharing all that with us. And everyone, we will put the links up so you can find where his page is for his book that he's writing. He's practically done. You're just kind of tweaking a few things, adding some things in here and there. So we're really looking forward to that. And just thank you guys for coming on, and replay viewers, thank you for watching. And we will be talking again soon. We're trying to figure out a day of the week to make this a regular thing, but haven't really decided yet on that. Wednesday or Thursday, maybe, something like that. So be watching for when we're going to come on next on Changed by Love. And I will see you next time. Love you all.